sort of interesting case tonight. This is the case of Kendra Hatcher. I firstly want to thank you guys for sticking with me. I know I've been kind of sporadic. I don't really know how to explain it. You guys know, you know what's going on in my life. And it's crazy, and it's difficult, and I am just doing my best to hang in there, y'all. Alright, shut up. Go. Okay, Kendra Hatcher. It was the 2nd of September, 2015. It was a Wednesday. 35-year-old Kendra Hatcher pulled into the parking space at Gables Park, number 17. She lived there, and it felt safe as there was a 24-hour concierge service. It was a vibrant, luxurious apartment block with a saltwater infinity pool, a fitness studio, and a gourmet coffee bar. We are in uptown Dallas, Texas. Now, Kendra grew up in Pleasant Plains, Illinois, but she studied dentistry there and she moved to Dallas for work. She recently accepted a job at Smile Zone, and this seemed like the perfect fit for her. Kendra had a strong Christian faith, and she wanted to use her skill as a dentist to help other people. Smile Zone offered high-end dentistry to children from disadvantaged households. I hate the dentist, by the way. I think everyone does almost. In her spare time, Kendra taught Bible study and took part in volunteer programs which involved building churches abroad and performing free dental work for children in Ecuador. Kendra's professional life was going from strength to strength, and her personal life was blooming too. Kendra was in a relationship with Dr. Ricardo or Ricky Penigua. Not sure I said that right. Ricky was completing a dermatology residency at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. And even though the two had only been in a relationship for a few months, they had already discussed getting married. Kendra and Ricky met via Tinder, and they went on their first date on May 24th. And from that very first date, the two were inseparable. They had similar values and wanted the same things in life. That evening, the 2nd of September, Kendra drove into the parking garage to park her car after work. When she pulled in, it was 7:42 p.m. It was something she did every single day, but that day she was excited for her weekend plans ahead. She had plans to spend that Labor Day weekend in Mexico with Ricky. But Kendra would never make it to Mexico. Just minutes after she drove into the parking garage, two men walking through the parking garage heard the sounds of screams and gunshots fired. After the shots were heard, a Jeep Cherokee, I cannot speak today, I'm so sorry, was seen speeding out of the garage. Hashim Sayed, who lived in the apartment complex, heard the screams and called 911. When the police arrived, they found Kendra's body in the parking garage. She had been shot dead. Now, the initial thought of the police was that this was a robbery, as Kendra's Coach purse was missing. Bullet shards and a handgun magazine were found on the ground beside her. But as police investigated this case further and examined the scene, they thought the manner of the shooting just really didn't suggest that it was a robbery. This seemed more like an execution-style shooting. The gunshot residue found indicated Kendra had her hands up and behind her head when she was shot. The entry wound came from the upper part of her head, and the bullet exited through her chin. But why would anyone want to kill Kendra through an execution-style shooting? By all accounts of her friends and family, people that knew her, she was well liked, and she helped anyone that she could. Police obtained the security camera footage at Gables Park 17. The footage showed a Jeep Grand Cherokee entering the parking garage at 7:15 p.m. The footage showed Kendra returning home and driving into that same this was the man who shot Kendra. The footage also revealed there was another person involved. The driver of the Jeep was a woman, and she drove out of the parking garage as soon as the man got back in the Jeep. But of course, like most CCTV footage, it wasn't clear enough to be able to identify them. So the police released images of the Jeep and the driver to the media, and they appealed to the public for help. And it worked. A man named Jose Luis Ortiz contacted police and told them the Jeep was his, but he wasn't involved in any type of shooting, and he wasn't even driving it at the time of the murder. Jose told police that on the morning of the 2nd of September, two friends of his named Brenda Delgado and Crystal Cortez asked him if they could borrow his Jeep. He said that they had told him Crystal's car was having mechanical issues, and they left the car with Jose for him to work on it, and he gave them his Jeep to use in the meantime. They were supposed to drive the Jeep back to him that evening after work, but instead, Brenda asked him to meet him at Chili's, and he agreed. But Crystal wasn't at the restaurant, and neither was his Jeep. Jose told police he was with Brenda at the restaurant at the time the shooting took place, and the Jeep was returned to Jose's house later that night. Jose, poor guy, had no idea that his Jeep would be used as a getaway car. He said the first time he became aware of it was when he saw the appeal that the police made and recognized his Jeep. He, of course, asked Brenda about it, and she told him it wasn't his Jeep, but then later said Crystal used it to go get drugs for somebody, and probably something went wrong. Jose told police that Brenda urged him not to tell them that it was his Jeep and that he could get in trouble with the police and risk his citizenship. He felt that she was trying to manipulate him, and according to Jose, Brenda suggested that he paint the Jeep a different color and that she would even pay for it. What? After speaking to Brenda, Jose did the right thing and reported the matter to police. Police spoke to Brenda. They asked her about Kendra. Brenda told the police she had no clue who Kendra was and that she'd never seen her before in her life. They asked her where she was at 7:42 p.m. the night of the 2nd of September, and she told police she was at Chili's with Jose, and even showed them receipts of the dinner. Police then questioned her about Jose's Jeep. According to Brenda, she gave the Jeep to Crystal. So police call in Crystal. Crystal was a 23-year-old single mother. They asked her if she was the woman seen on the footage driving the Jeep, and she confirmed yes, she was. She initially told the police that an armed carjacker got into the Jeep and forced her to drive to the parking garage that night. She told police that her 9-year-old son was with her, but footage showed there was no child in the car. And when the police tell her that, Crystal changes her story. She tells them there was no carjacking, and she drove the Jeep to the garage for the man willingly. But she claimed that she thought it was just for a robbery. No big deal, right? She insisted she knew nothing about the shooting, so police asked her why she agreed to drive there in the first place, even if she did believe it was just for a robbery. And she told the police that Brenda asked her to do it. So police were like, why would Brenda want to steal from Kendra? And then she says, well, Kendra is dating Brenda's former boyfriend. Police discovered that Brenda and Ricky dated on and off from 2012 to the beginning of 2015. When they separated, he started dating Kendra, and Brenda wasn't happy. But Ricky didn't have any idea of this. He'd ended their relationship in February of 2015, and he was dating other people murder. I'm sorry. If I made a new friend and within 2 weeks we're talking about murdering somebody, I got to go. Police discovered that Brenda wasn't just unhappy that her relationship with Ricky was over. She was obsessed, and she was desperate to get him back. She pretended to Ricky she was happy just being friends, but her life really had started to unravel. Her grades dropped, she missed work, she set about making it her full-time job to get Ricky back, basically. She cyber-stalked both Kendra and Ricky. She even hacked Ricky's email and discovered the plans they were making and the trip to Mexico that they had booked. And she starts to resent Kendra because Kendra has what she wants. She believes Kendra had taken her place, and she had, by all rights. According to Crystal, Brenda then made up her mind that she wanted to get rid of Kendra Hatcher. So Brenda asks Crystal, "Hey, do you know anybody who will help us with this?" And Crystal's like, "Yeah, of course." So they start making this plan to kill Kendra. They meet up numerous times, and they devise multiple plans. Multiple plans, guys. Wait. The initial plan was to inject her with heroin or a sedative, and then they discussed shooting her. Now, Brenda asked Crystal if she could find someone to do the actual shooting, or if she knew anyone, as she was from like a rundown, bad area of town. So they drove around and asked a number of people if they could help. Why didn't anyone call the freaking police? They later met a man. Wait for his name, y'all. Christopher Love. He agreed that he would help them, and they discussed different ways that they could kill Kendra Hatcher. They make a unanimous decision about the best way to kill her, which is to shoot her, as it will be fast. Crystal told the police that Brenda agreed to give her $500, and she agreed to give Christopher drugs and money. Crystal tells the police that they chose to as soon as she got out of the car. According to Crystal, she didn't actually see the shooting, but she heard it. They then drove away, and after Crystal dropped Christopher at home, she picked up her son and later met Brenda at Jose's house, where she dropped back off his Jeep. I apologize. Apparently there's like a helicopter or something. I don't live that far from a hospital, so. On the foot of the deal that Crystal made, she would be the star witness for the prosecution. There would be 2 trials. Christopher and Brenda were charged with capital murder, and their trials were heard separately. In exchange for her testimony and her guilty plea to a murder charge, Crystal was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Police found a gun hidden in the side compartment of Christopher's car, and it was the one that was used to shoot Kendra. Due to that, Christopher is willing to sing like a bird. He tells the police Brenda promised to pay him in drugs and money, and then he was hired by her to shoot Kendra. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. Before Brenda faced trial, she went on the run for several months. She was in fact even featured on FBI's 10 Most Wanted. She was arrested in April 2016 in Torreon, Colahula, Mexico. Mexico agreed to extradite her, but only on the basis that she would not face the death penalty. What? That's so complicated. Whatever. When she was extradited back to the United States, she was formally charged with a capital murder. Her family and Ricky's family just didn't believe that Brenda could have been involved in this. They knew her as a loving, wholesome woman, someone who had a good family and Christian values. Ricky told the police he'd ended his relationship with her, but they remained friends, and he even, texted her the night Kendra was shot to let her know, and Brenda, brave as she was, offered to help in any way that she could to console Ricky. Here my eyes roll in my head. Brenda pled not guilty, and her defense argued she wasn't even there when Kendra was shot, and she had an alibi and receipts to prove she was at Chili's with Jose. But it was the prosecution's case, didn't put an S there, that Kendra was killed as part of a murder for hire scheme orchestrated by Brenda. Brenda didn't need to be there at the time of the shooting to be guilty of murder, and she could still be found guilty because she planned and orchestrated the entire thing. It was her idea. She was the person who hired Crystal and Christopher to carry out the deed. The court heard Brenda had a motive to want Kendra dead. She saw her as an obstacle to getting what she wanted. It was her desire to be back with Ricky. The court heard that in the months leading up to Kendra's death, Brenda had become increasingly obsessed with her and Ricky. They heard testimony that the obsession from a number of people who knew Brenda. Her cousin Moses Martinez testified Brenda was depressed after her relationship with Ricky ended, testified that she offered to pay him if he would hit Kendra with a baseball bat. Of course, he declined to do so. Brenda's friend Jennifer Escobar testified Brenda was super obsessed with, in quotes, and angry towards Ricky when he ended their relationship. She told the court that Brenda would read through all of his emails and she tracked his movements on her phone. She told the jury that Brenda had even kept a copy of his house key and had access to his bank accounts. Jennifer testified that Brenda asked her to eliminate Kendra Hatcher and told the court Brenda wanted her to either inject her with something fatal or use a bat and leave her in a coma. She then told the court that Brenda offered to give her $2,000, a car, and drugs if she would do it. Jennifer discussed the offer with her parents and then declined. Who does that? It was the prosecution's case that Brenda asked a number of people to help her before she finally found someone who would agree. It was their case that she took advantage of Crystal. Crystal was a struggling single mother who made just $11 an hour, and she looked up to Brenda, this woman who had her own apartment and money, and she worth of cocaine. It's a lot of drugs, yo. The jury was told that Brenda was at Chili's the night Kendra was shot and went straight home after, but then they were shown footage from a surveillance video from Jose's neighbor's house that shows Brenda was at Jose's after Chili's. She was there with Crystal and they exchanged the Jeep for the car. The court heard the cell phone data also placed her with Crystal and Christopher before the murder, and that Brenda and Crystal contacted each other 99 times over a 2-week period from the 22nd of August to the 4th of September. The jury deliberated for like the shortest time I've ever heard of, just 30 minutes, and they found Brenda guilty. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. I can't with this case. So every time we have a murder for hire case here on my channel, I am completely blown away by the fact that people could meet strangers or people they know and convince them to kill another person. What do you have to say to someone in order to convince them to kill someone else? Now, I understand that I am generally a good person, so you couldn't entice me with things like money or drugs, because I don't do drugs, and I'm not going to say I don't need money, because that's not true, but even then, I value human life more than I value money, so I hope to never ever meet a person that could be coerced by money and drugs to kill another person. The length of Brenda's obsession completely reminded me of what I've been through, and I'm sure that it happens more often than not, and we just don't hear about it. But she had access to his bank accounts, his house. God only knows what she was seeing or knowing that she didn't need to know. She was just completely upset that Ricky had met Kendra and was moving on with his life, and she went off the rails. Off the rails. She was driving the truck. I don't have words for this one, y'all. Tell me what you think down below, and tell me what type of video you would like to see next week. I don't really have anything to ramble about, so it will probably be another reading video. Those are fairly easy for me to sit down and do. I could also use some case suggestions if you have any. My list is getting sort of low. Thank you guys so much. It's gonna get dark because I'm gonna close this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I've got to get out of this chair and stretch a little. I'll see you soon.